directly at me into my eyes. And when he did, he came right in the door, walked right up to me, looked me straight in the eye, and he said, "Do you work for the CIA or the FBI?" And I said, "No, I don't." And immediately this rush came over me, and I thought, "Oh, this is it." And he said, "Have you ever worked for the CIA or the FBI?" And of course, I'm 22 years old. I don't want to have anything to do with this. I'm thinking, why is this happening to me? I said, "No, I haven't." And then he proceeded to tell me, he said, "Have you ever thought about working for the Russians?" And of course I said, "Absolutely not." And he then proceeded to tell me how the Russians had been working with people like myself for a very long time, and that if I joined them, that I would never be alone again, that I would be surrounded with people that were like me. And I said I was not interested. And what he was talking about was a psychic program. And he said that this psychic program had been going on for a very long time. And of course I knew all about this. And I very nicely, politely, with a smile on my face, looked at this man and said that I was not interested. And he kept pushing and saying, do you know how strong you are?" And I smiled at him. I said, "Yes, I do know how strong I am." And he said, "But can you control your abilities?" And I said, "Actually, I can." And then he said that they would still be very much interested in working with me. And I told him that there was no way. I said, "What I would like you to do is go back to the people that sent you here, thank them very much for their interest, and tell them that there's no point in ever coming back because I will never be interested." So what makes this fascinating is that as a child growing up, my father on numerous occasions had told me a story of him being on the streets of Paris during the war, because of course he's from Europe, and how a man approached him. And what my father said was that they asked him to become part of the psychic army, the Russian psychic army. And he kept saying to me, "If they ever come to you, do not go with them. Do you understand? Don't ever go with them, because if you do, they will own you. You can't run and you can't hide because they will find you with their minds." And so, of course, I was always very frightened by this, and it didn't make any sense to me growing up. But in that moment, as soon as the man walked into the store and said, "Do you work for the CIA or the FBI?" I knew exactly who he was, what he was there to ask me, and I was very adamant that I was not interested. And I'm not interested for anyone to do something along those lines.
Okay, yeah, I remember that story from your book, and I think it's a real bell ringer. I think your father had what, maybe Native American blood in somewhere in there. He's certainly got I don't know, European. What would you say your background is, just in terms of genetics, I guess?
My mother is German. And as far as I know, all the way back, she's German. My father is Yugoslavian, and as far as I know, his family history going far, like way, 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 way back, I believe that there's some interesting blood there. But for me to say anything for certain would not be fair to him or to anyone, because I am not sure. But as far as Native American blood goes, no, I don't believe that there is. But with his bloodline, if there's anyone interested in looking it up, that would be able to go very far back, meaning, you know, even thousands of years, I think that it would be fascinating to see where it led.
Okay. So let's go to your incident in 1988. Is that, and tell a little bit more about that, you know, kind of capsulated, if you will.
In 1988, I was living a very normal, average life as a young adult. I just moved from a small town into the big city in Vancouver, British Columbia. And my friends and I had decided to take a road trip to my hometown. And on the way up, everything was normal. We took the drive and everything was fine. But on the return journey, everything changed. There were 4 of us, 4 adults and a young child in the car. And the trip, we were driving for hours. I was sleeping in the back seat of the car. And then it started to get dark out. The people that were driving wanted a break, so they went into the back seat, and I went up into the front in the passenger side with my friend. And right away, these big balls of light, that looked like truck lights actually, that's what we thought that they were for the longest time, came streaming up behind us rather quickly in the car. And as that happened, we were wondering why they were traveling so fast. Now, these particular lights followed us for hours and hours in the darkness, and every time we came up to a car or any kind of house or buildings at all, the lights would fall back and disappear. So after hours of this going on, eventually we went through a town where we thought for sure that we had lost the lights. And as soon as we got to the other side of this town, into the forested area, absolute moment, we said, okay, we're clear. There's no way they can catch up with us. And literally, in the blink of an eye, there they were, these balls of light that were probably about this big. And they came up behind us, and then poof. And at this point, after hours, they had been appearing and disappearing, appearing and disappearing, and in the blink of an eye. So my friend got very, very nervous, as I did. Neither one of us were comfortable with what was happening at all. And the people in the back seat were still sleeping. So all of a sudden I screamed at her and I said, pull over the car right now. It's not you they want, it's me. And I went to grab the steering wheel to pull her over, when all of a sudden she just sort of flopped, like a Raggedy Ann doll, and flopped her head over and started pulling over and stopped at the side of the road. And by that time the car filled with light from every direction, and these balls of light were sitting behind the car. So at that point I was the only one conscious at that time, and when I turned from the back of the car to the front, I saw a craft on the road. Now I couldn't make out any detail because it looked almost misty and very, very bright. And these beings that were about 4 feet tall were walking towards me. They were very androgynous, almost childlike in their nature, and they had big round black eyes. They didn't have any oval eyes at all. These were round black eyes. And they were directing me to get out of the car, which I did, and I was very scared. I wasn't terrified though, and that distinction needs to be made. I was not terrified, I was scared. So I got out of the car, they led me down the highway a little bit, and at this point I wasn't even thinking about my friends. I was just wondering where they were taking me. And on this embankment on the left, they led me up the embankment, where I saw, when I looked up, a larger craft that had 2 beings standing in this doorway. And they had blonde hair, and I mean blonde as in snow white hair, and the most brilliant blue Mediterranean water blue eyes that you've ever seen, and quite incredible. And the beings, the short ones, took me to the craft, and when I got to the doorway, I walked on board the craft. But what was interesting was that just prior to all of this happening, I'd had a dream in the back seat of the car, and in this dream that I had, this man and woman told me, they said, "We are coming for you soon. Do not be afraid. We are your friends. We are your family. Do not be afraid." And then when I saw these 2 tall beings, the moment that I laid eyes on them, I said in my mind, "What are you doing here? Why can't you just leave me alone?" And then I walked on board the craft.
And did you have any memories of what happened on the craft at that point?